Good morning, Copenhagen.
Good morning to you. Yes, my name is Michael Hjorth. I'm so glad to see so many here in this first Creative Mornings in what was it, 4 years or something. So I'm very proud and humbled to being the startup of this splendid tradition. So here we are. I'll be talking about rock climbing on some of the highest rock faces on this planet, and just to take in this these kind of buzzword, we can call the title is Rise over Rock in a Creative Way, and I will see to inspire you about looking into this that creativity comes in many forms, and actually also in the way that I am climbing. So beside of all these thoughts, we are going to see some big rock faces, trip to big rock walls, or in climbing lingo, if it works, it comes here, big walls. And during this my talk, we will rise up the Ketil west face in Greenland. We'll go to the Troll Wall in Norway, and a trip to El Capitan in Yosemite National Park in California. And what these three places have in common is that they are all rises up. They all have 1,000 vertical meters above the valley floor. A big wall is a wall of rock so big that a climber actually gets a little bit worried standing below it, because he or she knows that from now on it will be hard work. He or she knows that it will not be possible to get up in just one day. So big walls are the climbing sports stage races, where day follows day in a complex route in a vertical landscape. What is up there? Something is... what fascinates me, or actually the many fascination, I could talk for hours, I shouldn't, but some of the things that really fascinates me, one of them is actually the individual move or the move sequence in a climbing. Ideally, climbing is like a dance or a ballet. It is rhythmical movements, it is weight transfers in balance, and smooth, flexible transition from handhold to handhold, from step to step. And it's kind of a choreography created by nature, found by visionary climbers, and fixed in hard granite. Sometimes with gained experience, a climber can have this experience of that even the hardest moves are executed without any effort, without any thoughts, almost in a weightless flow-like condition. And it's a little bit like and when that happens, and it doesn't happen all the time, climbing transcends into an art form. It's like a thoughtless stream of consciousness like a short story by James Joyce or a music piece by Bach. But it's a very personal thing. It's for that climber only. It's difficult to communicate. I'm trying here, but it doesn't really work. And so it's a personal impression. Here we see Nia, one of the most talented or best young climbers in Denmark. And gender is of no matter. Here she's climbing on a indoor climbing wall in a climbing competition. Here she is climbing on a rock face in Greece and actually executing more or less the same moves. And through that, visiting many different indoor climbing walls, many different routes, many different rock faces, through that training of strength, coordination, movements, endurance, she will be, the climber will enable to face these kind of physical challenges, to master the movement, to master the physical thing. Back in the day, before the indoor climbing walls, our little group of climbers in Denmark back in the 80s, everyone knew each other. We were searching around in town, around in Copenhagen, for places to do climbing in between the trips to Sweden or other places. Finding brick walls with small edges for fingers and the pointed shoes, or scraping out the mortar in a brick wall, finding granite sculptures to move around on, and by that, training for the next trip to Sweden. But then, during the pandemic, climbing walls were closed, borders to Sweden and other countries were closed, so I had to refine that kind of creative looking around for places where we could meet and actually climb. And we reinvented that. Brick walls around town. This is down at Kastellet, or here some of the sculptures by what is it called? It doesn't matter. Some of these brick thing with cracks you can follow. Actually, when we did all that, French climber, videographer, he saw this and was fascinated by Danes in this country where the highest point is a mud heap in Jylland, 40 meters high, that we are actually doing so much climbing and meeting. So he actually made a beautiful video of us climbers climbing in these places, and it went out internationally in climbing for us. I took the liberty to cut a short piece of it, showing one of these venues. Is the sound on? No, it's not on. For some reason, the sound is not on. But it doesn't matter. It's me talking in this one. And I'm just, should we try?
I think you just need to connect to the
Then, instead of this thing, I can just say what I say here. You know? Talking about this kind of sandstone bricks at the main station, and I found that in spring 1988, and we were 5-10 climbers coming to this place regularly, going back and forth, and here I'm trying it again. I hadn't really at that when the videographer, this French climber, took this video. I hadn't been there for 30 years. But it was all engraved in my mind. Some of the holds I could not even remember them. I just did them exactly the same way. But some of the time I've forgotten, and I had to look around. Here I'm complaining about. There were a few other climbers started it, but they put foot marks. They put tick marks where they should place their feet, and I don't agree in that. I think it's finding and refinding these movements and remembering, and then I'm talking that back then I did it 6 times back and forth, 15 meters. I cannot do that anymore, but I could train maybe. So here I'm trying some of these moves. It's The ballet is a little bit lost here, but anyway, I'm trying it, and it gives a lot of finger strength. It makes the skin harder, which is good when you're climbing on sharp granite holes. I went there every second day in the 80s, and I was really, really strong back then. Maybe I should try to get a little bit stronger. Maybe I should just cut this video now and continue. With this physical mastering also comes the ability to protect the climbing route you are doing by placing safety equipment in the cracks. Here I'm putting in some of these expandable aluminum wedges, and then the rope goes into the carabiner and my partner is standing down on the ground. So should I not master the physical movement, the rope and my partner will hold me. But here, this climbing moves are transcending into something different, kind of the adventure, at least in the traditional climbing, in mountaineering, which is risk management, it's mental mastering. And exactly here comes one of the very basic and traditional condition, which I find very, very important in climbing. Climbing would lose its attraction in me if there wasn't danger involved, if it wasn't risky. And there's nothing to do with foolhardiness or daring as much as possible or being suicidal in any way. It's about being in control, in a potentially uncontrollable environment, like a big complex climbing route with different types of rock or looseness or bad weather or very long way down and long way after the climb. To work with all these mental challenges and be in control and finding the right way up and also of course down again. Now it's stored, yeah. So an important part of this kind of adventure or this danger risk management thing is the word commitment, to be engaged. Yeah. In a marathon, if you don't have the endurance, you can actually just step aside and take the bus home. Not on a long climbing route. If you don't have the endurance, if you have to turn around, there's still a long way down, or very often there can be this thing of point of no return, where actually it's impossible to turn around. That you have to continue the way you planned all the way to the summit, to the top of the route, and then back the other side. So you're committed in this thing. Also, I do sometime unroped climbing. This kind of solo climbing. You maybe saw the Oscar movie of this Alex Honnold. I do that by preparing, by exchanging one type of safety, the rope and these things putting in, by my knowledge of the rock in my home crack. But of course, Honnold, the consequences of him falling from 800 meters and me falling from 18 meters is more or less the same. But it's just to master that mental challenge of moving freely on rock. So combining the movements with the mental game and simply like in a no thought way be moving freely over rock. Oops, they're working. So socializing. Working together. Climbing is an individual sport, even though, of course, we climb in two and two, and sometimes from looking from the outside, it looks like the ideal way of cooperation, two climbers tied together by this umbilical cord of a rope. But then again, it still is individual, because sometimes your partner may be 30, 40 meters below at the end of the rope, and you're standing far above, and you have to solve those challenges that you've set yourself in front. But still, climbers, we meet, we inspire each other, and to solve these challenges in the best possible way. And traditional outdoor climbing and mountaineering is not a kind of a typical competitive sport. Of course, competition comes into it, but it's in a more subtle way, because you cannot measure the highest, the longest, the fastest. It's a more subtle differentiation of this performance. I can, for example, say that I've done this route or done that route, and then my friend can come and say, yes, I did those routes also, but I did them in rainy weather, or I did them in winter. I didn't bivouac on the way or something. So we inspire each other to actually do better the next time. Climbing and mountaineering is a 200 years old sport or whatever, with a strong tradition, which was created kind of those 200 years ago. British gentlemen going to the top of the Alps for their pleasure only, not for science or anything. In the end of the 19th century, rock climbing was defined as a singular kind of sport, finding the hardest route up a rock face, not necessarily going to the top. It was a way that was the goal, and it has to be harder than the other routes around. So then, actually the sport hasn't changed much, only maybe now that in the modern climbing we have these protection is bolted into the rock. So it changes sport into being a much more safe thing. I do that type of climbing. I did it last week in Spain, clicking these bolts. It's not dangerous. It's completely the movement thing only. But I do like the traditional way of placing my own safety gear in the cracks. Another aspect I like is the expression of climbing. Both climbers and everyone, when looking at a rock face like this, actually see the same thing. Everyone sees the same thing if it hasn't been visited by a climber. But then suddenly, two visionary, talented climbers come. They find a way up some cracks, going right on a ledge. Maybe they have to bivouac somewhere, continuing up. And then suddenly, we climbers, we see something completely different than the non-climbers. We see a completely clear line of this face. Here they went up the cracks, here they went left or right, or there they bivouacked, and then they continued up. We see something like an invisible work of art, which could never be erased. That is a little bit of a contradiction, but still it is. It will always be there, even if no one can see it. So, and even so, then when me and my partner, we repeat that route, going up the same cracks and going left and right, maybe had the same bivouac, we get the impression of these first kind of masters of their expression. So we feel it as a work of art from this one, and we do like this almost when we stand in front of this face. So what about nature? Yeah, nature is a medium for this sport. But now, when I talked about the move, for me actually, it doesn't matter if it's down in a dark cellar, on a plywood board and a wall, or if it's 500 meters up a granite face. I'm so engulfed in that movement, in solving this movement riddle, that I'm completely forgetting what's around me. But then, when I've done that move and I turn around, maybe put my ass on a little rock ledge, belay my partner up, looking down at the birds flying down far below, or looking up into the sky, or far out into the horizon, ridge after ridge of mountain, then mountain means everything. So all this, the moves, the companionship, the route finding thing, all comes together in this huge screen of nature and makes everything perfect. Here we have some statements. It's in this Danish. This is a Danish comic or children character. This is Rasmus Down. I think he's a bear. Then there's Pingo. There's his friend Skæg. And then there's Pelle in top. And Pingo, the bright guy, he says, mountaineering is most fun when the mountains are tall and steep. So 3 statements, kind of. We have fun, important. We have tall, high walls, yes, and it needs to be steep. All 3 very important, good things. But it can be, twisted. Here's a kind of a low mountain out in Fælledparken. Many years back, they wanted to oxygen the lake, and they had this fountain coming up, and there was a cold winter, so it froze into a little mountain. We climbed it. We had so much fun, but the mountain is not very high. A little bit steep, yeah. The lady with the dog, she was a little bit annoyed. But then 2 days later, we had like now Thor, and everything disappeared. So the ephemeral thing of ice climbing is a little bit neat. Then we have these people. Is that even a mountain? Or he hasn't even taken his foot off the ground, but everyone is laughing. So at least we have the fun part, and that is important. Because she's smiling, so I could say a lot about that. There's a lot of, in people's impression is that climbing is kind of this male chest-pounding thing, and a lot of these traditional mountaineering books, Christ, they're boring. They are, talking so far down. The bivouac was so cold. They were in so much pain. But stop, hey. These days, people have a lot of pain. So we're choosing this game ourselves. It's right, it can be hard. And of course there can be pain in the fingers and in the toes sometimes. But we chose it, so please smile. Please acknowledge that this is for the fun of it. And she is definitely having fun here on a climb in Bornholm. And also, I like to show that, to say that this male chest-pounding thing is of course changing. Now, the new young climbers, there are more young women starting climbing than males, and around, and even more important, that the performances, the hardest route now doing by women, no men could climb that for 10 years ago. So it's a strange, everyone thinks that you need broad shoulders and a lot of muscles, but no, you need movement and the ballet kind of thing. So, I'm busy. Okay, and then when half-naked men meet, sweet music starts, and everyone is laughing, of course. I started in spring 80. Climbing on Kullen. I've been reading about mountaineering since I was 10 and hadn't thought that I could do it myself. But after that trip, everything changed and I didn't look back. Also here, 81, and I'm climbing 300-meter routes down in Yugoslavia and Croatia. Back then it was mountaineering, which was the key point. So I did my apprentices in Chamonix and Mont Blanc. I did 3-4 different routes up to the top of Mont Blanc, alone or with friends. I went to the Himalayas, climbing what we call the most beautiful mountain in the world, Amadablam. It was a good trip, but I found that to master the Himalayan climbing, snow, ice, bad weather, I had to travel all the time from this little country in Denmark. So I concentrated on rock climbing, which is more simple. It's not so complex. It's easier to master. So we went to Greenland in this mountain in South Greenland. It was an expedition. We did get a man to sail us these 70 kilometers into the fjord to climb these some of these and we, in our naivety, picked the biggest, Ketil Pingasut. The mountain is 2,000 meters high, and the wall we want to climb was 1,200 meters. We haven't done a thing like that, like in Norway. But anyway, carrying a lot of gear. There's a tradition of putting all things out on a tarpaulin to show all this fancy gear. And when I took that picture, I thought, if all the gear should be down on the tarpaulin, all the gear should be. So there was the old days of analog. So when I went around to rewind the camera, I saw this one. There are so many mosquitoes, and I think they talk about the mosquitoes still, about all that meat 40 years ago, or 35 years ago. We were a little bit anxious, of course, looking up at this huge wall, but there was nothing else. We were there for a month, so finding a way through the bushes, carrying all that gear, of water and food and bivouac gear, all the way up, and starting off the small glacier below, moving up, finding the right way, looking at the formation and doing our best, and then splitting two people, two of us being in front, two of us carrying all the gear up to the next camp, moving up on the rope, so only the first climbers are actually touching the rock. And we got to the first camp here about, 400 meters up, 300 meters up, in these hammocks on a kind of, strengthened hammocks. And the two of us below, kind of in a free floors. Not so far, we got the next day on camp 2, and then we continued up to the top of the face, leaving our hammocks below this huge overhang. And getting up to the little bit more leaning parts in the top. I'm speeding through it. I can see the master is looking at me. But then bad weather came. We were halfway up. A huge storm came. Suddenly I saw sleeping bags flying in the air down from the hammocks, and we realized that this is not really a good place to be. So we were just sitting on a small ledge without any kind of bivouac gear. We had hoped to get all the way up, but we didn't. So we had to return, to rappel down, but still smiling, of course. Actually, the wind was so strong at one point I was lowering myself. I was lifted up and put down again from this crazy wind. And then, the mountain is still standing there. There are some French and Swiss routes up that face now. And we did other routes. Quick trip to Norway. My friend called me on a Thursday back in '92 and said, "What are you doing in the weekend?" "Nothing. Should we go to Romsdalen?" Well, I knew exactly what he was planning. And we should climb Trollveggen, the highest face in Europe, vertical face, 1,000 meter high. There were already some routes on this 1,000 meter face, and we chose the Ribbon British route done in '65. 1,000 meters of this hill slope going up to the route, crossing some snowfields, and getting into the face, where we just moved up through all these cracks, finding the right way, being in awe, being just almost humiliated or humbled to be in such a big face, which is actually not very solid. Big rocks was kind of falling out in free air from the top, just and down to the snow. But we were more or less safe in the middle of the route of the face. Climbing up, we were in really good form, Peter and I. There is a little bit above bar, but it's just Peter and his helmet. It's all good. We had to stop halfway. It's in June, so it would almost light all night, but we had a few hours of sleep on a sloping rock ledge. And then, that was a breakfast, a coconut. Not the most lightweight, but anyway. And then we continued up this cracks here a really intelligent way, because the whole of the troll wall is overhanging in the top. Just not this route. It's just going like in a staircase up to the top. But it was early in the summer, so there was snow in the cracks, which gave us a little bit of trouble with small climbing shoes. And then getting up, and again being absolutely humbled by this. It was like we were there on the premise by the allowance of the trolls, of the Norwegian trolls, and all these towers and loose rock and all this kind of, it was very spooky, but still in control. Then all the walking back, 10 kilometers back to the train station, and returning on the Monday to Copenhagen, away for 2-3 days. 6 years later, the whole route disappeared. So Peter and I, we are now, it's not my picture. Peter and I, we were the first Danes on the troll wall. We were the only Danes on the troll wall, and we were the last Danes on the troll wall. So we're going to, speeding up, Yosemite. That was in '94. I've been there 4 times. This was my first trip. We had 7 days on a wall, and Yosemite is kind of it's a mecca for rock climbing. So many climbing types and equipment has been evolved, has been invented in this valley with these unique points, at least for a climber, but also for the visiting people in the valley. Maybe on a busy day, 100,000 people are visiting this valley, all staying below in the forest, and the climbers being up on the big faces. And it's kind of a laboratory for hard climbing, because the rock is solid, not like a tall wall, and the weather is stable, not like in South Greenland. So you can really concentrate on the difficulty. Here's the most iconic face. It's the El Capitan. And just to show the size of things, I'm now looking at the formation called the Great Roof. It's coming up there on the right side. And we zoom into that on another picture. It's actually there in the middle. And then we take a little bit of a look. There are 2 climbers standing there, and 2 climbers there on this 1,000-meter wall. Climbed with Magnus, who was on this trip to Greenland also, a guy from Malmö. And we wanted to climb the longest and one of the hardest routes, called Mescalito. 25 rope length. The rope is approximately 50 meters. We planned to do it in 7 days and have 6 nights in portaleches in hammocks on the way. It takes a lot of gear. Here's the tarpaulin again. It's 15 kilos of climbing gear, 15 kilos of camp gear, water, 32 liters. That's about 2 liters per man per day, plus a little bit, some food, and 20 brown paper bags. Maybe I'll come back to that if we have the time. Some of the equipment, but now it's a little bit no to that Oscar-winning film. Alex Honnold, I met him a few times over there. He did a route just to the side of it in 2.5-3 hours, and he only had his chalk bag behind, nothing else. So there are different ways of climbing El Capitan, one has to say. He is trying to explain how he did certain things. So here's the first meter, and here's the 949 remaining meters. So that is sometimes the difficulty of finding the way. You're straight to the rock and then finding 1 kilometer. Which way are we going? So it needs a little bit of imagination, some knowledge, and good climbing abilities. Then we're hauling all this gear up. This is some of the food and camping gear, and this is the hammock, this frame thing, collapsible frame of the hammock. And actually you can see that it's vertical and actually overhanging a few places. We climb in a different way. Back then we are putting in that gear and then putting a small step ladder into it, putting that in and stepping up, and that continuously. That's a little bit of a slow thing, but it was kind of the norm in that time. Now climbers are so strong they do it by only hand and feet, protected by the rope, except if you are Alex Honnold. And then moving up the rope with these rope clamps to make that a little bit faster. Here I'm hauling the gear up with this pulley thing, Actually, you can see all our gears hanging free in air. We have a point of no return. If we don't want, we have to go back. It took us maybe 3 days to get to this place. It will take us 3 days to actually get down again. And this is a little bit interesting that where can you not come in 3 days anywhere in the world, in the jungle of Amazonas, if you have a helicopter maybe. But here we are, 3.5 days from the top, 3.5 days from the valley. And we can still talk to people down on the ground. It's a little bit of a special ambience. Some of the gear is not the best to move. This is just a hook on a little ledge. And I use that as a kind of protection or to get me a little bit higher. Or the first climbers put in small aluminum pegs drilled into the rock. You have to find these, hook them, and then move further. So that's definitely a mental game also. And this is, of course, the relaxing moment to lie in the portalace, look down, and these trees, the pattern is just inched into my brain still here, 30 years after. We had bad weather one evening, one night. But there's a little tent for this ledge. And what is better than lying in an almost waterproof tent in an almost dry sleeping bag with 400 meters of air below your ass? It's the best. Some of the gear, using that in a wide crack. I did that pitch. It was a little bit of a mental game, so I really fell in love with that equipment and still have it at home. In the top, there was a little bit of free normal climbing with hands and feet. And this is the last meter over the edge. This is the tree on the top. We thought we were finished. We ate the last of our food from the cans. And then we realized there was one more move, quite hard. Magnus took it, 30 kilos on his back. But one slip on those slopey holes and you're 950 meters down in the valley. It was okay. And then we cleaned up all these brown paper bags. That was back then. When you had to do it, you did it in a brown shopping bag. And then you threw it out, shouting, "Shit bag!" But then we bought the rubber gloves and then collected all ours and all the other climbers' brown paper bags. Good guys, hey? I went there 4 years ago to do the most famous route, the nose. With that great roof we saw before, 1,000 meter. We went up to about here 3 times and then got stuck in a queue. There's so many climbers on that route. Nose is the Mount Everest of big wall climbing. So many climbers. And we were sitting on that ledge all morning waiting for these 4 people waiting for this guy over here. Maybe he didn't have the thing in it. So they were waiting. We got so frustrated. We ate the food, threw out the water, rappelled down, took down our tent, took the car and went out in the afternoon. And then when we left the valley, 8 hours later, they were still hanging there. This was my last time to Yosemite. And this is the last picture, smiling. It's important. We do it by our own choice for the benefit of ourselves. So